Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Yellowjackets Hive podcast, presented by cordcutting.com. I'm Media Melanie, here with...
And I'm Emily.
And today we have a very special topic. We thought it would be really fun to celebrate Pride Month and talk about all things gay with Yellowjackets.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided we'd bring back friend of the podcast, Rotem Rusak, news editor at Nerdist. Hey, Ro.
Hi, everyone. Happy Pride.
Yes, happy
Thank
Pride.
You. Right back at you. We appreciate you joining us today. It's always fun to talk to you. And we haven't spoken since the ending of season 2. Why don't you give us your quick thoughts on how the season wrapped up?
Oh, I think it's interesting. I have like a mixed opinion of the end of the season because I think they had like a lot of cool ideas, almost too many cool ideas. And then the end was really like everything's happening all at once. But I was a little like, wait, how did we get here specifically? You know, I just was like, there were some ideas I felt, did it end up going anywhere? Like Coach Ben and his visions. I was like, I'm not sure where that went, or even Ty and, you know, No-Eyed Man. And I do appreciate a slow burn for sure. And like, if we look back next season and are like, oh my gosh, it all makes sense, then I would love that. But I also do think things need kind of like a shape in the moment as well. So I thought they had many big ideas and like carried off many of those well, but also I was like, maybe a little bit of a narrowing of focus moving forward would be great.
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. And we're actually going to have you back on to talk specifically about your feelings about the police storyline this season. So we've got that to look forward to. We know you have some thoughts on that as well. So we'll get into that in a future episode. But for now, we again thought it would be fun to celebrate Pride Month. Let's start just by talking about the gayness of Yellowjackets, the representation with the cast and the characters. What are your thoughts? I mean, they do such a great job with representation.
Yeah, I mean, I always say the show is like very queer. I think there's like several levels of like a show being queer in some senses, because I think you can be queer in a very broad sense, which I think the show is. Like, we've left society behind. We're no longer in the rules of like normal play, at least in the wilderness storyline. We have a bunch of women at the forefront. Like that's out of the norm. So that for me makes the show very queer. Of course, you can employ a queer set of actors. You can have queer people in production behind the scenes. And I think the show also hits out of the park on that. And then of course you need queer storylines as well. And of course, we do get those. I do think the show could like push the envelope a little in terms of like that aspect of it. But I think it's hard out there. We're still getting queer representation to where it should be. And the fact that they hit it out of the park on like 2 out of the 3 things, and then they can really like catch, you know, they still have seasons to like catch the actual queerness of the storylines up. So I'm hopeful and I'm supportive, and I love how queer the show is.
Yes, yeah, same. Representation is important. Inclusion is important. And, you know, it's really nice to see also some advocacy. Of course, we know Liv Hewson, they identify as non-binary at the age of 16 is when they started identifying as such. And they use they and them pronouns, of course. And in 2020, Liv Hewson had received the Human Rights, Campaign Visibility Award for their LGBTQ plus advocacy, which is amazing. Yeah. And notably, Liv is not submitting themselves for the Emmys this year because they didn't feel it was right to compete in a gendered category. So good for them. I think that's very important to stick to your values, what's important. And I think it just goes further into the good job they do in the representation of the show.
I wonder if like here on out, like for award shows like that, like if they will start to include a non-binary category, because like there are so many people that identify as being non-binary.
Yes.
I think the hope is to get rid of gendered categories altogether, and then we wouldn't like face this, because so many people are like on so many places in the spectrum that it's like introducing another category, you know, that's great. But I think just getting rid of that kind of like gendered binary or, triplicate or whatever it is. We'd be here all day if we were trying to create like as many categories as people have like identity.
Yes.
So,
That's true.
so hopefully like that's a great first step, and like the more people calling for that, and people call for it just generally, and a performance is a performance. So
exactly, talent is talent, right? No matter who you are or how you cut it. So
absolutely.
Definitely. And of course, Jasmin Savoy also identifies as queer and is a lesbian. And Jane Widdop, Laura Lee from season 1, another non-binary cast member. So really nice to see. Of course, we also see characters in the show identify as such.
I'm just sorry. I'm just shout out also to Nicole Maines, who's a great trans
activist
this season. She's fabulous. We all love that character. So hope to see more of them upcoming.
Yes. And it's a good question. Are we going to see more Lisa in season 3? I hope so. She was phenomenal. Nicole Maines was another great addition to the cast. So
our friend Kelly McClure interviewed her, and something that she said in the interview really made me think that like we're not done with Lisa yet. Like she kind of hinted at filming for season 3 in the interview. So I don't think Lisa's storyline is over.
That's awesome, because like she's kind of Lottie and Nat's like adopted child, which is a great queer storyline. So maybe she'll take over the cult, or you know, factor in with Lottie or Misty, helping Misty find closure about Nat. Who knows where it could go, but it's almost like a next generation, right? Because we have Callie, who's like Shauna's next generation, and Lisa, who in some ways is like Nat's and Lottie's next generation. So we're seeing how the trauma continues to affect, but also the like wilderness teachings. So
yes, 100%. And of course, we have Coach Ben playing a gay character in the 90s, which was not an easy time back then. Of course, he came out on one of the episodes. And Nat, of course, kind of figured he was gay, as she mentioned. He didn't really look at their boobs or whatever. So so we've got that. And then also there's always the question of Shauna and Jackie. Are they or aren't they? And, that's been a big debate. I think a lot of the fandom, believes that there maybe was something going on there, and they did have kind of a complex friendship relationship. What's your take on Shauna Jackie, Ro?
Yeah, I think inadvertently or not, they created a very resonant story for many young queer women. Like many people go through that experience where they have confusing feelings for their best friends, and it's like, is this friendship, is this sisterhood, is this romantic? I do think the show leaves it in an ambiguous space and leans more toward the sisterhood. I wrote an article about this in season 1, but there's still a male body between them in most cases. Jeff is still like present, and that could still be true, but make us feel a little differently. Like, is Shauna sleeping with Jeff because Jeff has had the experience of sleeping with Jackie, and that's something Shauna wants? But I feel like they do stop a little short of like going there, but the storyline is already there. So I support, like, I'm not sure how it is, if it's with Ghost Jackie or via flashbacks or whatever, but I think that they would really benefit from making that not just something that we read into, but something that reads out to us. So
definitely. And it will be interesting to see if we get more Ghost Jackie moving forward. I think we'd all like to see more Ella Purnell, and wow, did her story wrap up in a very roasty way this season. So yes,
as you said when we discussed it in the after show, that was our first introduction into the cannibalism, and that was our soft cannibalism, if you will.
Yes, and you think we're in the medium cannibalism phase right now, right? Medium.
I still think we're in medium, because like they didn't put the knife to Javi's throat and slit it. Like they couldn't do that. Like Shauna still wasn't ready to like split Natalie's throat. So like when they get there and they're like, okay, or you're gone, or they actually literally kill somebody and then eat them, then I think that's like the final frontier of cannibalism.
The hard stuff, if you will. Yeah.
That's a great way to describe it.
It comes in phases, and it makes sense because it is a progression. Of course, spiraling away from society and humanity and normal things. So yes,
Yeah.
definitely waiting for that hard stuff, probably in season 3. We'll see.
Yeah.
We will see. So let's talk about TaiVan. There is a lot of shipping for TaiVan. They are obviously together on the show. Emily, why don't you start out by giving us some of the clues we saw early in season 1 about them eventually getting together?
So we first get our first glimpse that there might be something more going on. For me, it was right after the crash when Van was trapped in the plane and Tai was running around, and she was so concerned with finding Van. Like, that was the only person she was asking about. And obviously we see Van get out safely, but we also see like a little hint that there might be something more between them when they initially find the lake. They all jump in, they're all swimming. Tai is sitting on the side doing Akila's hair. And you can tell just the way that she's watching her. Like the camera angles, the music that was playing in the background, like it was geared to hint to us that like there was definitely something more than just friendship transpiring. And we continue to see this until we see, I think it's Blood Hive, that we first see Van and Tai kiss. They're hiding behind a tree and they start kissing, and then Mari starts screaming because she thinks that she had a bug crawl on her. And they go back over, but it's very much still secretive at that point. Like, they hadn't let anybody know what was going on. And honestly, I think partly that was because they themselves didn't really know like what exactly was going on between them. They were still kind of figuring it out. And we see them again were they in the lake when they were like drawing on each other's backs? And like in that one scene, like they have a discussion, like this is right before they make that decision to go and hike out for help. And they're like drawing on each other's backs. And Van says something like scared of what other people will think. And Tai's like, no, I just don't want the drama. So we had all these hints. We saw it come together. We saw them being intimate with each other. We saw them have conversations about it. And we saw them have conversations about the fact that other people didn't know. And it really obviously comes to a head when Van gets attacked by the wolf.
Yes.
Because Tai jumps down from that tree and she saves Van's life. But she wouldn't leave her after she was attacked. She was physically taking her back to the cabin, wouldn't leave her, made everybody else go for help. And I think that like was almost like a wake-up call for Tai too. Like, it made her see like, I really care about this person, like, and I don't care if people know that anymore.
Right. And there's a little bit of guilt, of course, mixed in there too, because Tai ended up in the tree, was supposed to be on watch. And, you know, she had given the talisman to Van as a gift and a piece of protection. And obviously that didn't work because Tai ended up back with it again. And of course, you know, Fugue Tai was in play at that point. So
yeah.
Yeah, Lottie gave Tai the necklace.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Sorry.
Which I actually think is interesting because there is kind of like a triangle with Van, at least in season 2, with like Van and Tai and Lottie, because Van is very torn between Tai's way of seeing things and Lottie's way of seeing things. But it's interesting that they still gave like Travis, Nat, and Lottie that like sex scene triangle. I'm like, maybe it should have been Van and Tai and Lottie in that sex scene triangle. I don't know.
Yeah. Quick comment here from Little Rose, who said Sophie Nelisse said that Shauna is bi and did like Jackie, and Ella said Jackie was straight. So
I did read
interesting.
That.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay.
It's interesting to hear what they think about their characters, like, because we all have our own opinions, but I always like it when like they talk about the show as viewers too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It makes it a lot of fun. So they eventually end up coming out, Tai and Van, And
Mhm.
what spurs the decision to clue the rest of the group in was, of course, Van's wolf attack.
Mhm.
And their coming out moment at Doomcoming for me was just
Mhm.
such a big moment of like joy, right?
Yeah.
Letting everybody else know that, they are together. I just love that moment. That was one of my favorite moments, I think, in
Yeah.
season 1. There are many, but that was one of them.
I loved how like when that happened, like everybody's watching them obviously, and Mari's like, "Are they?" And Akilah just looks at her and she's like, "Duh."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. You love to see queer joy, and I think that that's kind of like the beauty of the wilderness. And I think this season maybe we lost a little bit of like the beauty of the wilderness. It was more about the viciousness of the wilderness, and like that's totally true. But I think one of the actors was talking about like how Ty and Van felt free in that way in the wilderness. And then when they came back, it was almost like they had to go back in the closet in a sense. I don't know if we'll explore that more going forward, but I think that is like a really beautiful point about like what the wilderness gave to them. And I hope that they press that a little bit more going forward.
Yeah.
Definitely. And it was nice to see Coach Ben celebrating them as well. I feel like that kind of gave him a sense of maybe hope for himself. I mean, like we said, the 90s were a difficult time. Things were not as open and inclusive as they are now. So, seeing Coach Ben kind of applauding for them, I think was a moment. And of course, he comes out in season 1 to Nat and whatnot. So,
I think that made him feel like more comfortable with the fact that like he actually is gay, and like more comfortable with the idea of other people knowing that he was gay, because he saw these teenagers bearing their souls to everybody and showing a part of them that like they were obviously really scared to show, because like you said, being gay back in the 90s was totally different than it is now, and the way that people reacted to learning stuff like that was a lot different.
Yeah, I think I'm with Coach Ben. It's really interesting. We see him kind of almost regret not leaning into his queerness this season, almost like it could have saved him if only he had been like willing to just commit to like being with his boyfriend or like be his real self, then maybe he wouldn't have even gotten on that plane. I think that's really like an interesting thing people wrestle with, and like it's true, like, it's true that it's hard to come out, and like sometimes it does make you feel better, but like it also is hard to do. So it's like not like a morality judgment ever, I think. But I'd be interested to see like what happens with that storyline, because again, I didn't feel it got like that much resolution. Like what was the sideways world? Like what was happening with his boyfriend? Was that even real? Like was that really his boyfriend? Like there's so many questions. So I hope that again they like revisit the idea of that and like the choices he was making before and like what choices maybe he would make now. And like I really thought he might die, but now I kind of hope that he doesn't. So we'll see.
I would love to see him make it out of the wilderness. I still think there's a chance he could have sent the postcards. I mean, it's possible that they were rescued and maybe he was hiding at the time and ended up staying, maybe coming back later. I don't know.
The longer he survives, the
Right?
more inclined I am to think that like he might actually make it out. Like, and it always brings me back to Melanie Lynskey gave an interview like a long time ago, and she said that we will see him around for a lot longer than people suspect. And that always, like, I always think about that whenever I think about like him possibly dying. But granted, he already has made it longer than like I thought he would.
Than many people
Me
expected,
too.
I think. Absolutely. And to your point, Ro, too, about like where were the hallucinations of Paul going? That's a really good question, because I don't know that they really resolved. And there were some strange things like seeing him wearing the hunter coat, for instance, and then the juxtaposition of the cabin blending together with that hallucination of what their reality was before. So it was interesting. And we had 4 episodes of Paul.
Yeah.
And I just like, where did it go? I mean, is that what saved him and prevented him from going off shit cliff? Is that what put him over.
Well, it seems like that kind of is almost what pushed him to the
Yeah.
cliff. So that's
Mhm.
why I'm like very curious to see what they do with it, because I think they did a little toe that line, being like, well, if only he'd come out, he wouldn't be here. And I'm like, well, that's a little harsh, you know?
Yeah.
So hopefully that's like, there's more to it in there. And then like, I don't know, maybe there is kind of like a lost sideways world. There is some reality where he didn't get on the plane, and maybe that's just the afterlife. It's hard to say. So I guess we'll have to stay tuned. But yeah, I hope we see more, and more of his boyfriend potentially. Maybe he does survive the wilderness to live happily ever after, which is what I hope for every queer character. So
Of course, and
fingers
that
crossed.
Yes.
Ben.
Oh, all appendages crossed at this point. I mean, would love to see that. Actually, that may have not been the right joke, given whatever. But anyway, back to Doom coming. Tai and Van had that moment that night when Tai asked her to take the mask off and
Mhm.
said, "You're fucking beautiful." And I thought that was just another moment, because Van's been through it. I mean, we know her face heals very well out there, but
Yeah.
it was metaphorical a bit too, revealing her inner self and shutting down any insecurities, and letting Tai see her for who she was, scars and all. And I thought that moment, the unmasking, was nice. There were many of these nice moments between them, so I appreciated that one as well.
Yeah, it was really sweet, that moment, because like obviously Van was very insecure about her appearance after that happened. That's why Tai made the mask in the first place. And Tai really didn't care. Like Tai thought she was beautiful, like the way that she is, like scars and all. And I think that moment was really important for Van too. Like I think that moment like solidified their relationship a little bit.
I thought that was really nice too, because everybody else was like kind of being all crazy and like a bit dark, but they got this like beautiful moment, almost like the wilderness was like, you don't have to be a part of this right now. You can just have this lovely moment together. And I thought that was really nice for them. So I was happy to see it.
Definitely. So Little Rose said, agreed. I think they made her like that because Van wasn't supposed to survive season 1. Her character's lighthearted and happy. They needed her to make her somebody willing to survive. And what's interesting is Van wasn't supposed to be a survivor. They loved Liv Hewson so much that they cast an adult Van and changed the plan, which speaks to the absolute talent of Liv Hewson for creating such a strong character that their performance spawns a whole adult casting, which is incredible. And of course, Lauren and Liv are so well matched in terms of casting as well. I think that I mean, all of the casting is great, but this one in particular really resonates with me, and I think the rest of the fandom as well.
They look so similar too. Like it's so crazy. They have such similar facial structure. Their hair coloring is obviously very similar. And yeah, I mean, we talk about the casting all the time, but like you said, like this casting in particular, like Lauren Ambrose very much embodies Liv Hewson when she plays Van. Like they're on like the same wavelength, like through and through.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point about Van, and I wonder what they'd planned for the character when they were thinking that. Like, was this whole romance with Taissa already like planned, or was that after they saw the performance where they were like, okay, let's really like build the character into this story? I feel like Van is always on the precipice of death, but I do think that like killing Van what was like a good choice not to do, and would be like a mistake going forward. I don't really think that they will ultimately, but I'm like, oh, don't do it. Don't bury your gays. Yeah, there's not enough of them yet to spare.
Yeah.
Definitely. And we see in season 2 as well that Van is kind of questioning, why is she still alive? Why is she still there? What is her purpose? And of course, Van is very much a big Lottie supporter out there in the wilderness. Then in the adult timeline, we see a little more skepticism. She's not buying in. But at the same time, she wants to cancel the psyche eval for Lottie, which I think is interesting too. So there's some wavering between the timelines and the buy-in.
I kind of feel. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, bro.
No. Go.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I just kind of feel like with all the different ladies, it's like there is this big theme of suppression. Like even Lottie is like suppressing, you know, and then it just kind of explodes. And I don't know if I would say Van like 100% believed that if somebody was sacrificed, the wilderness might heal her. But I think that on some level she kind of did. Like I think when you see like Lottie be like, this was the right thing, you'll see, and they like look at each other, like I felt like that kind of like Van darkness. Like I'm like, oh, maybe she did plan for this on a level. Like, and I do kind of think we'll see the wilderness or science put her in remission going forward. So we'll see.
The cancer thing is really interesting. We did a poll on Twitter and we asked, would you rather see Van's cancer be cured or would you rather see another adult survivor? And Van's cancer being cured actually won, which is
I thought that.
which is interesting. So I mean, we all love Lauren Ambrose and want to get more. So and Joe's here saying, I feel like the consensus with present day Van was she still believes in Lottie and called off the eval to try to cure her cancer with the hunt, which there's a little bit of a selfish aspect in there, right? And an expectation of that being done is also interesting because that's a far-fetched thing to buy into.
Well, I think maybe you could be like, she was like, if I was meant to die, then I will be selected and they can kill me and it will be over. Or if not, then I was meant to live, kind of. And that's kind of the wilderness mentality where it's like it's all up to fate. And although I didn't think it was like the right time for Natalie to die necessarily, I do think there is like a real sadness to the idea that like Van had this trauma happen to her and through this trauma had this taste of like a freedom or an ability to be her truest self, only to like leave, be forced back into society which doesn't accept her, and then have cancer. Like I'm like, no. This is not the right like life for Van, who is so Van and like needs to have like that free and clear joy. Like that's my ultimate hope for our Van at the end of the show, for her like to not have cancer anymore and to like get to like
take a carriage ride in New York City with the soft pretzel, right? We want her to get the soft pretzel in New York City.
Exactly.
I think we can all agree on that.
I kind of felt like Van as an adult, like in regards to like believing in all of that stuff, like when they left the wilderness, I kind of feel like she left that behind with her. And like it was very much like out of sight, out of mind kind of thing for her. And she kind of just like pushed it to like a deep corner of her mind. And we see Lottie for the first time, and it like reopens that aspect of her life. And very quickly she falls right back into that role. And like you said, like, is it possible that she went along with it because she thought she was going to be cured? And like, that's why she called the psych team off. And is that why she drew the card first? Like, is that why she was like getting on Shauna for shuffling the cards and trying to buy some time? Like, because it seemed like before they saw Lottie, like she was different.
Yeah, I think that could be true.
Yeah.
I, again, think that they could do with like maybe revealing a few more of the team is queer out there. Like I super support Van Ty. I think that's amazing. But I thought I saw somebody tweet that it's like almost unrealistic that they're the only queer people out there. I really think like there could be something with Van and Lottie. I feel like Lottie had a strong connection with Laura Lee as well. Like,
yes.
I support the sisterhood connections, but I'm also like, I think we could have a few more like overtly queer connections happening between the team folk.
And there's some opportunity for that. We, of course, saw those 3 mysterious extras pop into the card draw scene. And who knows, maybe one of them will engage in such a storyline. Because you're right, it would be nice to have more. I mean, there's a big team out there, and they're probably all somewhat, sexually frustrated. And, it will be interesting to see where that goes. And
yeah, and I think the sexual aspect is actually very interesting, because I do think that it's always a fine line with queer characters. You never want to like sexualize them, and you never want to like see them as like these unsexual beings who are like purely just like romantic love. You know what I mean? And I do think Yellowjackets does do a good job in giving physicality to the queerness. However, I do think when you look at like the physicality of the hetness, which is what we're looking at as like the base, kind of the norm of what people feel comfortable showing in like a TV show, that we've seen a lot of straight sex for not a lot of men in the show as key characters. So I'm just like, I do think that there's still like a little bit of a tiptoe around the physicality of the queerness, which again, I think like could happen going forward. So
definitely, yeah, we'd love to see more physicality. I think it would make it more realistic for sure, and mirror, true life a little bit more. Season 2 Tai and Van, there was a lot happening. They had a lot of cute moments. This one in the snow in particular, but there was also a lot of darkness, and we see Van being very protective of Taissa in terms of her sleepwalking. We see the rope being tied to her. We see Van just completely protecting her, and then on the other side of it, we see Tai kind of buying in on Lottie's stuff and attending the morning meditations, if you will. So they're both each vested in each other, and I think that becomes a lot more clear in season 2.
For sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's interesting that like other Tai like will only respect Van, like that's the only person that she'll speak to or kiss or like be in the presence of overtly, kind of, where it's like, I'm not Tai, I'm this other persona, but I like you. That's very sweet. I'm like, well, maybe other Tai can be with Van and Tai can be with Simone, and they can all be together.
Definitely. And there's a lot of complexities in the adult timeline with Taissa and with Van, and of course with Simone. We really didn't get any insights into Simone's status at the end. Of course, we did get to see Tai and Van kissing. That was a big moment. And of course, the first time that we see Tai walking into Van's shop, and just the look on her face and the way that Lauren Ambrose delivers this Tai line was something we were all waiting for a long time. And I think that moment really delivered. And it was interesting to see how things progressed in the adult timeline between the two of them, given it seems it's been years since they've seen each other.
Yeah, we've kind of like deduced that we think at this point the last time that they saw each other was possibly at Jeff and Shauna's wedding, because they say that they went, but that was about 20 years ago. We've surmised at this point, I think, just based off of what we've seen like in the wedding announcement that we saw, and just given the references to time that the characters have made. So they probably were together when they left the wilderness, I'm assuming. And something happens that obviously causes them to split, because as we know, Tai marries Simone, and she says to Shauna in season 1 that when she went to college, she got to date a lot of beautiful women. So they were not together at that point, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And it seems like, as Tai said, she's not necessarily feeling it with Simone right now. So it's like she was kind of looking for that and seeking that. We surmise she's had, or has known, that Jessica Roberts at least had Van's whereabouts and information for who knows how long. And she never sought her out up until things transpired more. And
Mhm.
when she did, it was Fugue Tai who broke into Jessica Roberts' house and
Yeah.
hitchhiked all the way there. So is it some innate force between the two of them that brought them together? Was it all this Lottie stuff where they were supposed to all end up at the same place? I don't know, but they did end up at the same place.
Yeah.
We see, of course, this moment with Van comforting Tai. That was definitely another TaiVan moment in this season, and there's been quite a few of them in season 2 in the adult timeline.
They
Yeah.
so quickly revert back to their previous relationship when they come together as adults too. Like, you can tell very clearly that Tai feels a level of comfort with Van that she probably doesn't even feel with Simone. Because we don't think that Simone knows what happened to them out there. And that's something that has them bonded forever, Tai and Van, because they both went through something traumatic, but they went through that something traumatic together.
They sure did.
Yeah, I think the truth is maybe they just shouldn't be in a relationship right now, either of them, with anybody, because I think what's become very apparent is that they have been repressing themselves fully, not living, not engaging, in a sense, with everything that's happened, which is such a big part of them. And that is a big deal. And I think they need to really engage with it and then consider if, what the romance aspects look like. But hopefully we can see a good unraveling of that if they do have to now face the fact that they just did this again and it's not in their past and it's in their present now. So
right. Something else I found fascinating with the adult timeline was that Van revealed she was not going to tell Tai about her cancer or that she was dying. So if this had not brought them together, it's apparent that Van could have just died and Tai never would have seen her again. So this whole twist of fate, I don't know if that's really the right term, but them coming back together again is interesting because it really never should have even happened. I mean, at all.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the questions the show toys with this time. Where is it fate? If we make it, are we making fate? Does the fate exist? What is this conception of meant to be, kind of? Is it less meant to be because we made it be, which is a question they ask with Javi, on a darker level. It's they made him drown in a sense because they probably could have saved him, but then it's fate that he fell in the first place. So it's complicated.
It is. And the Javi situation, of course, Tai and Van were the ones who found Javi in the first place out there. So that was quite a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we see Van in the teen timeline shifting as well with the Javi and the ice scene. The look that is on her face when all of this is happening and they're letting Javi drown, that's a different Van than we've seen. I mean, in terms of character shifting throughout season 2, I think that was a really big moment. Just that one look on her face for me was saying a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
she was terrifying.
Deep darkness. Sometimes Liv gives this look and I'm oh, scary.
Yes. And I think we can feel that with Lauren Ambrose too. I mean, she kind of channels that darkness as well. Again, just a nod to how incredible the casting is with both of them. And another thing I love is just seeing these behind the scenes photos as well with Lauren and Tawny. Oh my God. They're
so cute.
So cute. I love them on and off screen together.
Yeah.
They just have a really good chemistry.
I did think that Van's first introduction into the show is really perfect. It was a very real queer vibe. The song they were playing, What's Going On, that's a queer song, a queer anthem. It was just right. And she was just having donuts and her little nook store is a very real queer fantasy happening.
Yes, and we waited so long for that moment. I mean, we didn't get Van until what, episode 3, episode 4, maybe in season 2?
Episode 4.
Episode 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we really waited for that.
And it
So
was at the very end of the episode too.
Yeah.
Like all we got was when Tai walked through the door and Van is like, Tai, and then it cuts out. So yeah, we were given like 20 seconds.
yeah, and I don't think people loved that cliffhanger. I think everybody was kind of sharing the same thoughts, like, come on, couldn't we have gotten more Van earlier, sooner, that type of thing. But I think we're all just
Yeah.
glad she came anyway. So
Yeah, I think it's hard because like it took so long for Van to show up, and then took so long for them all to be together, and then they were all together, and then Nat died, and it was like, was that enough of all of them together? I don't think so.
and
I think she's on a picture.
I love this moment of them in the snow.
Yes.
You know, you brought up Nat, and we see a little peek of Nat in the background there, and just look at the joy on their faces with the snow kiss, and they've got the liquor, and
Yes.
nobody knows how bad things are going to get at that point. I mean, things unfold and get pretty dark relatively fast, especially in the finale. I mean, things, to your point at the beginning of this episode, Ro, things escalated very, very fast. Even with Shauna trying to buy all the time, everything. I mean, between Callie and Lisa showing up, there was just a lot of things that happened.
Yeah. I felt that I felt that the future timeline maybe like treaded some water and then went really fast. And then in the past timeline, there was just like a lot happening always. So it was just like, yeah, I think it's just growing pains and just figuring out what works best on every level. But I do think I just think that dynamic between all these such well cast adult women, like they could have maybe given us a little bit more of that. And also just on that like pride queerness, I know people are really pulling for like Misty Nat to be a thing, and they had like a really intense friendship. Who knows how they define that for real, but I felt like that was very tragic, kind of. Like Misty's done a lot of questionable things, but she like really loved Nat. And so I'm like, I don't know if Misty deserved to kill her either. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I mean, Misty killing her was just such a tragic twist of fate for me. And then the manner in which Nat's legacy will be left in terms of her having been a former addict and then dying by an overdose, for me, really was kind of a disservice to the character. But I also understand it's a television show. That's what the writers thought was best for her character journey. But I mean, it was a gut punch. It was a gut punch. And it will be interesting in season 3 to see the fallout of that, especially from Misty, who is going to be having all of this crazy guilt. And what's going to happen with Tai and Van? Is Dark Tai going to stay with Van, to your point? And, you know, non-Dark Tai going to go back to Simone? What's going to happen?
There's 2 Vans. It's fine. There's enough Vans. I mean, there's 2 ties. There's enough tie to go around.
The adult timeline for me, like the way that it ended, like it had me questioning, like, where do they go from here? Because the teen timeline was the perfect cliffhanger with the cabin burning down.
I agree.
And the adult timeline almost felt more like a series finale to me than like a season finale, like the finality of what happened with Natalie dying and Lottie possibly being shipped off back to the hospital, the police timeline being wrapped up, like Shauna not being in legal trouble. So where do they go from here? And like you just said, where does Tai go from here in regards to Tai and Simone? Like, Van is back in her life now. So does that mean that like Simone just falls to the wayside and they are now together again? Like,
will Simone even give Tai the time of day when she wakes up out of this coma? I mean, do we even know if she's awake?
I mean, I guess it just depends on Tai's choices. I mean, you know, can she come clean? Can she tell herself the narrative that she has been trying not to tell herself, like about herself, kind of? And even Lottie is like, you have to embrace it, kind of. You have to acknowledge this part of you. Like, it's real, it's there, you know? And then, you know, obviously you should probably clue your loved ones into it. And so, I mean, I think we do have a big question mark. Like, is this a story about like overcoming the trauma? Like, is there a point where they are bigger than that, where they can be like, there is no wilderness force, we make our own destinies, like we don't have to kill anybody, etc. Because I think on some level they do all believe that. Like, that's kind of the takeaway, that on some part of them all is like bought into this ritual. So I guess it's like acknowledging and overcoming or giving into it. So I don't know. We'll see.
Do either of you feel like, at least at the end of season 2, like in the adult timeline, like to me it seemed like Van had like some power over Taissa. Like Taissa very much, like in the first season, like she's very sure of herself. Like we see that she doesn't believe in any of this. Like she's very vocal about that. Like, and the end of the season sees Van telling her, like, I believe in this. And like, you're either going to support that or you're not. And she supports that. But then in the adult timeline, it's almost like the opposite. Like she is just so unsure of everything. And when Van comes back into her life, like Van's able to persuade her to call off the psych team for Lottie. Like she makes that phone call, and she made that phone call because Van said, like, we take care of each other. We protect each other. Like we don't get outside people involved in our problems. Even though Tai knew that, like, that probably wasn't the right thing to do. Like she still did it anyways. And it just seemed like maybe it's because Van knows her in a way that like other people don't know her, but they just fell right back in. And it seemed like Van was able to like not control her, but you understand what I'm saying, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And to the point of Little Rose here, Van knew as soon as Tai was lying about Adam Martin, and that does come from an inherently deep connection from the past timeline. And I mean, with the sleepwalking situation in the teen timeline in season 2, I'm curious. We know that Tai is doing some sleepwalking situations again in the adult timeline. Is Van going to help her navigate that again?
Yeah.
And are we going to see that mirrored maybe in season 3? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely possible because Tawny Cypress has spoken at length about season 3 and about the fact that like we're going to get a lot more about Taissa and her journey and like what's up with the man with no eyes and like all those.
Oh my god,
another queer icon.
Yes, and Taissa is a state senator now too, so there's of course also the risk of scandal. Of course, once the press gets a hold of the car accident, Simone, who knows again what's going on with Steve and Sammy? Is Steve dead and gonna come back to bite her as like an animal abuser or something? I don't know, but there's a potential for scandal. Imagine, the headline: state senator gets together with cannibalistic teen romance, something or other. So, I mean, there's a lot of visibility with her. So
it will be interesting to see how they deal with that. I feel like that's another big idea. I'm a bit in the vein of like Adam's murder, and I'm not sure they necessarily landed the plane on Adam's murder as like a big storyline that's kind of like involving the external world. So it'll be interesting to see like how much they tackle that. Do they tackle it? Like, is that even the point, kind of? So we'll see.
Yes, and Q Awkward Noises is pointing out, have you heard the theory that Van eventually falls in love with alter ego Tai instead of actual Tai? I haven't heard that,
I have not heard that.
I could definitely see that being a possibility, given that they had that close connection with Van and Dark Tai in the Wilderness timeline.
Maybe Van ends up taking advantage of Tai in that other state at some point. Like, I don't know how she would use it to her advantage, but like she follows her while she's sleepwalking. She talks to her. Like she's the only one that's ever like interacted with this other Tai. And Tai talks to her. Like she says to her, like, I go where she shows me. And Van is like, who is her? And tight. I don't even think she actually says anything. I think she just kind of gives her this like really creepy
A
smile.
look, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it could be like that she could help the other tie instead. But we'll see. I think that's another storyline that kind of didn't have resolve. Like, what are these symbols in the trees that they're going to? Like, what does that mean? What are the markings? Why is it a big symbol? Like that also kind of was like there and then gone. Yeah. So hopefully Van can communicate with other tie and learn what she knows, and maybe it could be helpful. Maybe the symbols mark like safe trees or something, or like places to like hide. Because that tree that Javi found was marked, or there was a marker close to it, I believe.
Yeah, we've speculated that it might be possible that all those trees that have symbols on them could possibly have similar caves underneath them, and like maybe they're all connected, maybe not. Like, definitely a possibility.
Andy's asking, are all the symbols the exact same on each tree? And I think so, but I also feel like on Reddit there was somebody that said the symbol was different on one of the trees that they featured in season 1, which may not necessarily be by one of the cave trees, but all of the ones that I think we've seen marking these particular trees, they all look like the same symbol to me.
Yeah, I think so too.
And the position of the symbol might show a hiding spot. Say if the symbol rotates in a lot of different orientations. I mean, that's definitely possible. A big TBD on the symbols. Of course, we had seen, Nat and Travis going out 7 miles in each direction. We saw them kind of mapping it out. Coach Ben with his map, also trying to discern some sense of anything from the data that they have. And what's a shame is that map probably burned down unless Coach Ben brought it with him to his tree cave. So,
but evil Ty knows where the symbols are, so
that's right.
Yeah,
she can bring them again. She didn't need any map.
That's right.
Help her.
He led Van to symbols that created the shape of a symbol in the wilderness. Like, that was crazy.
Oh my God, 100%, 100%. And then also with Dark Ty, was she Javi's friend? Is the other big question too, because we know Javi had a friend out there. It would make the most sense that it was Dark Ty, especially given she knew the location of the tree where they ended up finding Javi. But is it possible it could have been somebody else? Is there like a wilderness like tree queen out there or something? I mean, we saw Javi's drawing, which looked like a woman with long hair in the tree roots, which is fascinating because Ty does not have long hair. So just saying.
True. That's true. It could be Van. I mean, anybody I think could still be the antler queen until somebody wears the antler queen crown. And Van is a queen, so
she is, and it'll be interesting to see, do they pass the crown? We saw, of course, Nat was crowned the latest antler queen at the end of season 2. And then, of course, her adult character died. Are we going to see that in season 3? Are we going to see a season 3 finale where they pass on the crown to somebody else and then that character dies in the adult timeline? The passing of the antlers. That's something we've surmised. Or does Natalie stay the antler queen the whole time? And that's why it was such a big blow losing her in the adult timeline.
I've seen a theory that, like, since Lottie was taken away at the end of season 2, that, like, Van steps up and like she takes over like for this group that Lottie has and leads them and like fills in that role for her because she was kind of like her second in command in the wilderness, and like that it might be possible that like she sees it as like almost like her duty to continue on with what Lottie's doing. Not sure if I believe that, but I've seen that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I also thought it was interesting that they did not reference like a queen or roles or anything in the sort of future version of the ritual. And I know that was kind of like a, a low, like a great value version of the wilderness in a sense. It wasn't like the actual wilderness. But there was no mention of like a queen of the hunt or like anything like that as part of the ritual. So I don't know. I'm curious if it is to do with the hunt or if it's separate, like, or you know, if they just didn't like want to include it because it's spelled spoilery.
Yeah.
Another moment from the finale that like I keep thinking about, like in regards to like when they drew the cards, was when Taissa is drawing and she hesitates and Lottie says, Taissa, you know what happens if you don't draw.
Yeah.
That has had me so curious, like ever since I watched the finale for the first time, because that to me indicates that like obviously like we saw the beginnings of this process that they created to sacrifice each other to survive, but like I very much feel like that gets like fine-tuned as they go along, and like they'll make up new rules, get rid of rules that like didn't work in their favor or something like that. So what happens when they don't draw?
Yeah.
So many questions.
Yeah.
Well, Emily, you had also pulled some quotes from the actors. Why don't you read a snippet of Liv Hewson talking about Tai and Van's relationship?
Sure. So she says, what I think about all the time with these two characters, I think they were together before the plane crash, but I think they were hooking up and not talking about it. I don't think it was serious. So what I think happened is that they're falling in love with in the wilderness. They're coming out to their friends saying, I love you. So like we already had said, like we've speculated that like their relationship started obviously before they were in the wilderness, and the actors themselves are saying the same exact thing, which I think is really cool that like they're even like thinking about the backstory for like what we haven't seen on screen.
Definitely. And you'd also pulled a quote from Lauren Ambrose. Why don't you read part of that one?
There's a lot of energy in there for each other, what they went through together and how they got to live so fully and be who they are out there in the wilderness. A big thing is that all of these characters in their essence were most alive in the woods. And especially, I think Tai and Van being able to be in this relationship openly with their teammates, which is not really the experience that a teenager would have in 1996. And what that must have been like coming back into society and back to the real world. And then I have lots of questions about how it was for them to part. And we talked about that too. Like what exactly does happen when they leave the wilderness? Like how do they part? Like I've seen in interviews, I can't remember if it was Liv or Jasmin, but they have also speculated that their relationship might end while they're still in the wilderness. Like that something happens between them that causes them to divide, causes them to split. And that would be a really interesting like add-in to the storyline. So I would be curious to see if that actually ended up happening. I could see that happening, like them splitting in the wilderness, because that would definitely add to the plot a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And then how about reading just a little snippet on what Tawny Cypress had to say as well?
Yes. Taissa regresses back to being unsure of herself post-crash, where everything was so delicate in her world. And then when she meets up with Van again, I think that's really going back to regressing to an old relationship. She relied on Van so much that she goes right back to relying on Van and doing anything Van tells her to do because of this traumatic relationship. It's like when you have your first love. You move on with your life, you come back to that first love, and you fall right back into step.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, it's going to be really fascinating to see where this all goes in both timelines with Van and Tai, because we know that they separate into clans. That's something that was said early on, and we have not seen that separation yet. So a big question with TaiVan is, are they on the same side or are they on different sides? Because again, we see Tai buying in now with Lottie's stuff, but is that going to change? And we think that Van is going to continue the buy-in. So does that separate them, or are they on the same side? What do you guys think?
I think that could be what divides them.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they probably would end up on different sides in that case, but maybe like evil Tai is secretly like playing for the other side. Who knows? but it would be interesting. For sure if they
That
What do
will
you
be
think,
interesting.
Melanie?
I think it also will be probably a divisive thing, and they're on different sides. But to Rose's point, perhaps we do see Dark Tai like sneaking over, and them hooking up at night, and maybe that will be mirrored more in the adult timeline with your point, Ro, of maybe it's Dark Tai and Van, getting together. So I think dramatically it would make more sense for them to be on different sides, definitely. Yeah. And I'm also dying to know, if there are two different sides, where are they sheltering? Are half of them sheltering at the plane? Are they hiding down in the caves? How does all of that work out? Is it like, are they competing in some way, and then like the winning tribe on Survivor gets to have the better shelter and they alternate each time they do the ritual? I am not sure, but hopefully we get more insights into Pit Girl, into the ritual, into them assembling these full-on costumes. Of course, it's been a gradual progression from masks and they're dressing up at Doom coming to Shauna covering her face when she's butchering Javi. So there's a lot of questions for season 3, and there were a lot of coals in the fire, if you will, a lot of storylines we need more on. And for each of you, what do you think is the number one? Ro, I know you've mentioned the man with no eyes. Like, is that one of your top things that you would like an answer to, or is there something else as well?
Yeah, I would love to see where that storyline goes. I would love to see more of, a relationship build for Van and Tai. I would love to see more with Coach Ben and his boyfriend. And it's Pride Month, so generally more queerness all around. For a queer show, I think we can push the envelope. The fans are there. The people are excited. So let's see where we can take it.
Yes, definitely. What about you, Emily?
Well, I really want to know, obviously, like, since the cabin burns down, like, what do they do? Like, that's my like most pressing question about season 2. But I'm also really curious to see, like I said, like, where the adults go from here. Like, that question keeps coming in my mind. And like, Van has almost died like so many times on the show.
She's
and
invincible.
Not only that, but now we know she has cancer. And I really don't think cancer is going to be what kills her if she dies. So I'm really curious to see what happens with that. And in the finale, when right before Lottie gets taken away, like, she says to them, "It is pleased with us. We gave it what it wanted." And she looks right at Van and she says, "You'll see." And that for me was like, does Lottie know? Like, is she really psychic? Like, does she know that there's something wrong with Van? Like, because that's what it felt like to me. That was the vibe that I got anyways. Yeah, I'm really curious to know about the man with no eyes too. That's a big one, since we haven't gotten any more of that storyline.
Yeah, nothing on that. For me, I want to see more survivors in the present day timeline.
Yeah.
To Wolfie Van Frankenstriker's comment, Aquila is a character that should be explored. I would love to see Aquila in the adult timeline. She is the every girl who doesn't have to be a mean girl. Instead, she does have a moral gauge. She does not agree, but likes a ritual. She's a good person, and I agree with that. I would love to see more survivors. I'd love to see Coach Ben, and I would love to see Aquila. I think that would be really awesome. I love her character. The whole Nugget thing like really got me. I did not see that coming whatsoever. I mean, that was a good one. That was good. So I'm hoping to see more adult survivors. But
to that comment that person just made about her like having a moral gauge, like, when we interviewed Nia, she actually did say, like, we asked her, like, how do you think Aquila felt about the whole card choosing situation? And she did say she does not like it. Like, she is not okay with it. But at this point, she knows she has to go along with it because it's kill or be killed.
That's
right. And for that reason, I'm hoping that hedges her bets on survival more so maybe than some of the others, like a Jen or Melissa or something. So we'll have to see how that goes. But circling back to TaiVan and just, the queer elements and the gay elements of Yellowjackets, I also think they do a great job, and it's something to be celebrated. And of course, there have been tons of articles written about it, but I think it's a narrative that we just need to keep on talking about. And Ro, to your point of pushing the envelope more, I think we'd all like to see them push the envelope more with the physicality, the overall queerness in general. And I'm excited to see where that goes and how much they can really embrace it and keep it coming, because I think we can all appreciate this level of diversity inclusion, both with the characters and with the cast.
So
Absolutely.
if you both had to choose, like, as of what we've seen already, like, what's your favorite moment that we saw Tai and Van have together?
Favorite moment of TaiVan? I mean, for me, it's the coming out at Doom Coming. I just like,
Same.
I like gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
I felt that. It just was such a freeing, happy moment for such a dark show. And that really brought some light into it, I think, in season 1 for me. So I think the Doom coming out for me.
That's a big one.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Definitely love that one a lot. And it's so nice to just see them be really happy and like just embrace the magic. So that's all you can really hope for.
And again, I think we would all like to see Tai and Van on a carriage ride in New York City, enjoying that soft pretzel. I would love to see that get wrapped up with their character journey more towards the end of the show. I think hopefully they planted that seed and that tree will blossom and it will just be a fairy tale happy ending. And of course, we saw Van starting to tell a fairy tale. So who knows? Maybe it's all subtle clues to their fairy tale having a happy ending someday.
I would love that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of fairy tales, Ro, you had done your article for Nerdist on fairy tale archetypes in Yellowjackets, which we had you on to talk about before. So for anyone who hasn't read that, highly recommend it. You had some very good insights on all the different characters. It was back from season 1, but very insightful. We loved your comparisons. Misty as the witch in particular was one that I enjoyed hearing your perspective on. So
thanks so much.
Of course. And thank you for joining us. It is always a pleasure. We know we asked you last minute for this and appreciate that. And we'll have you back again probably next month.
Amazing.
And yeah, we are very excited. And thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear your thoughts on the police storyline.
Yes, many thoughts on that. But really happy to celebrate the queerness of Yellowjackets and Pride Month and all the fabulous overlaps that Yellowjackets gives us with that. So thanks for having me and can't wait to speak to everybody soon.
Yay!
Thank you.
All right. Well, happy Pride Month to everybody. Let's all keep the celebration going, and we'll talk to you again soon, Ro. And we appreciate you all dropping into the live stream as always. And big thank you to our partners at cordcutting.com. Be sure to bookmark our new Hive Hub page at cordcutting.com/Yellowjackets/Hive. So head over there and be sure to do that.
Yes. So until we spill again.